that with it.
Tonight we are in the Boyd's community at the Brantywell Primary School, where we took the education to the community. We allowed the persons within the community to be able to ask questions about the AstraZeneca Oxford COVID-19 vaccine. We were privileged enough to have Dr. Wilkerson here with us tonight, sharing the information and answering the questions. We had quite a number of questions from the persons who were here, and fortunately for us, we were able to get quite a number of persons who were able to sign up as well and are willing now to take the vaccine because they were able to have this session. This is the first in a number of community level sessions that we are going to have with persons, because we know it's important for persons to be able to ask the questions and be able to debunk some of the myths and the untruths that are out there about the COVID-19 vaccines. And so we are happy that we were able to be here at the Brantywell Primary School in Boyd's. Next Wednesday, we're going to be in two communities actually. We're going to be in the St. Johnson Community Center, but we're also going to have another team that's going to be at the McKnight Community Center doing the same thing, sharing the information and giving persons as much feedback as we can about the AstraZeneca COVID-19, because it's important for us to make sure that we reach that 70% herd immunity necessary for us to be able to get our lives back to as normal as possible. And so we're encouraging everyone to roll up, to roll out. Don't wait, vaccinate.
I took the vaccine because I want the in-person audience experience at Sugar Mass 50.
I took the vaccine because I want to be performing with all my peoples on Ultra Truck this year for Carnival.
I get vaccinated because I want to be on the road for Sugar Mass 50.
The reason I chose to be vaccinated because of my profession as an entertainer was to have a safer Boyton Carnival.
I am DJ Flames, and I got vaccinated because I want Sugar Mass 50 to be greater than ever.
I took the vaccine because I miss entertaining thousands of people and I miss hosting my own events. See you at Sugar Mass 50. Boom.
Get vaccinated quickly to turn up Sugar Mass 50.
Tonight we had another successful town hall meeting in which we engaged the community regarding the vaccination rollout in St Kitts and Nevis. As of this afternoon, we had just under 6,000 persons who have been vaccinated. That brings us close to 18% of our target population, which we need to have vaccinated to achieve herd immunity. Tonight's session was to bring the information to the people in a manner in which they have the opportunity to share their concerns, to express their fears, and to have them answered by the professional and the experts in the health ministry. I want to commend our Medical Chief of Staff, Dr. Cameron Wilkinson, our Permanent Secretary in Health, Dr. Dolores Stapleton Harris, and of course the District Medical Doctor, Dr. Bernicia Nisbet, for participating in this very rich experience for the people of the community of St. Paul's and the adjoining areas. I think this has been highly successful. We had a sense of joy. We are at the end of the question and answer period. A number of persons move forward to have their vaccination. That tells me that it was very persuasive, it was impactful, and it has helped. And I know these persons are going to be ambassadors. They're going to be out there with their own experience, sharing with others, and as a consequence, we're going to have more persons participating in the program.
So the first half was everybody looking off. Okay. Welcome back to Leadership Matters, which is hosted by Prime Minister Dr. the Honorable Timothy Harris. And this evening he is joined by Minister of Justice and Legal Affairs, Attorney General the Honorable Vincent Byron, as well as Medical Chief of Staff, at the JN France General Hospital, Dr. Cameron Wilkinson. If you would like to participate in the program, because we are now at the segment where you can participate, you can dial 466-2666 or 662-8674 or 767-4765. There's also an international line that you can use, and that number is 1-239-645-4500. And those numbers are listed at the bottom of the screen for your convenience. We also have 2 WhatsApp numbers that you can use, one for messages, and that number is 661-5683, and there's one for voice notes. That number is 660-7168. Leadership Matters is aired live on ZIZ Radio, Freedom FM, Sugar City FM, Vaughan Radio, and WINN FM. It is also streamed live on the social media platforms of ZIZ and the St Kitts and Nevis Information Service, also known as SKNIS. So you can look for them on Facebook or YouTube. And the aim is to try to reach you wherever you are in the world, or the nationals living abroad. I am pleased to also announce that the program, which continues to grow, is now available on even more platforms. So you can now catch the program on Spotify, as well as Google and Apple Podcasts. So more ways for you to catch up on all the matters raised here on the program. Without further ado, we're going to go to the phone lines and take our first call for this evening. Welcome to Leadership Matters. You're live.
Hello, night.
Hi, good evening. Welcome to Leadership Matters.
Wonderful good night to the Honorable Prime Minister, Dr. Timothy Harris, to you, and the rest of the panel there tonight. This is Bucky Garrett. Welcome to Leadership Matters, and leadership really matters. Now, it would appear as though the opposition leaders are playing politics with this vaccine. And the reason why I always say that, now you have 2 doctors who ran in the last election. You have the former, the Right Honorable Dr. Denzel Douglas, and you have Dr. Duke. Do you know if any one of them already took the vaccine? And do you know if they are encouraging persons? Don't you think that they can organize their own forum and educate the people, seeing that they are doctors, and do more encouragement and education in getting people to take the vaccine? I guess this one I'm going to go to the doctor. Can anyone interested attend to the town hall meeting that is coming up in Atlas on Thursday? Also, do you know if the bus drivers are taking the vaccine, or could you give an update of how many persons have taken the vaccine that are bus drivers? What about taxi operators? Remember, these are the persons who carry the bulk of our passengers back and forth. So could you give me a little summary? I don't know if you have that data to hand. If not, it will be good to show, prove that data that people are taking the vaccine, and you are doing a good job in educating and keeping the people safe. There's a question that's still raising about quarantine. Maybe you should do some small clips and have them circulate to the media about the quarantine still stands at 14 days, and you're looking into to see if it can reduce to 7 after reaching her, what's the word? Humility? Yeah, I think that's the word, right? So just continue a good job in terms of educating. People are saying you're not, but if they follow to the media, they will see week after week you are having educational on the vaccine, and while there, you can get vaccinated. Keep up the good work, and let us reach that maximum of 70%. Have a good night. This is Bucky Garrett, and Bucky always got it. Over and out.
Thank you so much for your contribution to the program. We'll take another call. Welcome to Leadership Matters. You're live.
Good night, Jack. Good night, Ms. Brian. Good night.
Good evening.
And good night to the Honorable Prime Minister, Dr. Harris.
Good evening.
And good night to Dr. Wilkins and to the Attorney General, Mr. Byron. Now, I want to commend you, especially Dr. Wilkinson, at the top, at the head. You and the CMO. You all have done a wonderful job and continue to do a wonderful job, in spite of the criticize and the negative talk we're hearing out there. You understand? So we just want to commend you and the cabinet of the government to keep focus and to be strong, because this is where all the negative one they want to hear. Things to happen, and then we get in a disaster in the Federation. Like some people saying that they must wait until we get community spread to take the vaccine. What a thing like that. You all done so well from since the beginning of the COVID to shut down the country, and we have our social distance and use our masks. And you're going to tell me that no, we have things so good. We're going to wait till now that we have things so good and the vaccine available to wait until we got community spread to take the vaccine. And the next thing again, I'm hearing about this security breach. I want to know those security was there at the establishment where them people was, and they get out of quarantine and went the places go associate themselves with people. I want to know if their security gone charged to for doing what they're doing, because I believe if security was there, or they wasn't sleeping in it, and these people get out, it got to be somebody was supposed to know that these people go in there, or maybe they get paid by somebody to let them out and then go and come back. So I would like to know what penalty will, if the security let them people go to these business establishments and go associate themselves with people. So I would like to know from the Attorney General what penalty will come against those security. And continue to do a good job, Mr. Prime Minister. You're back strong, and I want you to continue, you and your cabinet. You all have a wonderful night. God bless.
Thank you so much for your contribution. We'll take another call. Welcome to Leadership Matters. You're live.
Good night.
Hi, good evening.
Good night, Mr. PM. Good night, the AG. Good night, the Medical Chief of Staff. Welcome back, Mr. PM. I have missed you over the last 2 weeks. That's my fault, though. I've not been able to get through to you. But anyhow, I'm successful tonight. Mr. The Dr. Wilkinson, the word COVID, the name of the pandemic, COVID-19, where did that name come from? 19, I assume it comes from the date or something. What is exactly is COVID? I've heard of H1N1, SARS, I've heard of swine flu, but COVID is a new word to me. That's one thing. Herd immunity of 70%. Is that referring to the adult, 70% of the adult population, or is it 70% of the total population of the Federation of St Kitts and Nevis? And is there a date by which one would expect to achieve that 70% herd immunity? And God forbid that we don't reach that figure. You think there's a likely possibility that consideration could be given to making vaccinations mandatory? I will listen off here for your responses. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for your contribution to the program. We'll take another call. Welcome to Leadership Matters. Good evening.
Hi, good night.
Hi, you're live.
Good night. Yes, good night, Prime Minister.
and good night at the head table. Prime Minister, I would like to ask you, when the government embarked into building a house, and secondly, that I went to on social media, and I see, young people crying out for house, Mr. Prime Minister. Young people are crying out. You understand? I'm saying, Mr. Prime Minister, that, young people need help out there. They need help because the system to get a house is not working. Is not working. So try to make the system, go back to the drawing board and try to make the system workable. You understand? To make people smile and to empower young people. People out there need a house, Mr. Prime Minister, and I know you can help them, Mr. Prime Minister. People that need job, people hungry, Mr. Prime Minister. People out there suffering, people want water cutting off, people lights cutting off, people out there suffering. I'm not saying that the vaccine, I'm not saying the vaccine is a good thing, is a good thing, yes, but it is a real, genuine issue need to be addressed for young people. I thank you.
Thank you so much for your contribution. We'll take another call. Welcome to Leadership Matters. Good evening.
Good night. You can hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Best leadership. Prime Minister, people see and know the good you have done for over 5 years. Instead of going on all the program talking about raise of pay, and you did not cut their salary, call and say thanks, stop views and want to be around. They see what's going on. If you're not nice, why dear? My wonderful Prime Minister, none like you and will never be. Prime Minister, you look good, hard work paying off. Do not, the distractors can't stop you. Don't mind the say you did not get there by mistake. They was glad for you. The party you come from don't matter. I just want to wish you all the best. God's blessings, peer life, good health, strength, protection, and thank God for you. And for me too, that I can enjoy all that you're going to do. Whatever you promise, it's 6 years to 20, things will come. We don't have anything to talk about. We have to be careful and keep the protocol serious. Bus and taxi men and others, it's not happening. Let us watch TV, listen radio, all those deaths. St Kitts small, we can't take that. People wish they was living in St Kitts and want to know how you get that to Prime Minister. Prime Minister, no more to live, please. Our real natives will want to come home. Thanks to you, the CMO, Mr. Samuel, and others for a job well done. To Dr. Wilkerson, who get the vaccine already. If they go to a business place or function, how they will know who get? If both will have to show something or it don't matter. Good night, culture. Good night to all my friends and family who live away and just listen. Thank you again. Get home safely all.
Thank you so much. I hope you enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you. We'll take another call. Welcome to Leadership Matters.
Hello?
Hi, good evening.
Yes, good evening, Jacqueline, and good evening, Mr. Prime Minister, Mr. Attorney General, and Dr. Wilkinson. A very pleasant good evening to everyone who listens in this program. I must then say, Prime Minister, thank you very much for the kind of leadership that you have been giving to the nation and the whole world. You are one who the world is admiring. I must let the world know that I went to Tabernacle, my neighbor, on Friday, and I take my choke. So I'm vaccinated, covered. Thank God for the work that you have done in Tabernacle with the clinic, the health center. And I have to big up the people who work there. They are very customer service oriented people. And they are very polite and professional. So kudos to them again. And Mr. Prime Minister, thank you for such a young hospital in Tabernacle. Now, Mr. Attorney General, when someone accuses another of something that they have no fact, can they be taken to justice, to the court? Well, reason for that question, the former leader of the Federation of St Kitts and Nevis, he said the government is hiding information from the nation because he was told, I think I said it sometime, but this is something very serious. He was told by some doctors that there are people who died in St. Kitts from the COVID, and the government is hiding that information. The good book said, the words of your tongue is more powerful than any automatic hydrogen bomb in the world. That is the most destructive weapon. So my question to you, Mr. AG, what can be done to somebody who accuses another of something that they have no fact? And the other thing again, Mr. Prime Minister, as the Minister of National Security, I know that your heart is with the country and the people. Lives matter before money. And if you now have that kind of concern for our lives, our little 3.8 million population, we would already been spent and everybody would have dead gone. So thank you for that. And there are those who are trying their best to mash up this nation with their tongue by spreading all kind of propaganda about the country. But while me, culture are alive, it ain't gonna work. It's not gonna work because we who are on the side of righteousness, we are more than those who are on the side of destruction. And I will talk and talk until I go down in the earth. So you are doing well, and I'm backing it up. Now, there were some people who break the protocol, and we all know it, in Nevis, and they came out and they deliberately did what they did because they know better. And we want to know what is the penalty for them after they've been to the court. And according to what the penalty is, Mr. Attorney General, I would like you when you go in the House to step up whatever the penalty is on anybody breach the protocol of this COVID. Because, Mr. COVID, when he hit you and he say go down, no coming back in that. And life is more important than any kind of money in the world. And there are some people who are breaking the law every day on the government road. Breaking the law, and I ain't gonna hush until something is being done about that. The Prime Minister addressed that last week. For those who have no respect for other people must have a peaceful rest in the place where they reside. And nothing has been done about it. We've been talking for years and months, and it seems like it's going on deaf ears. And we know that there are people who are supposed to enforce and uphold the law. They are ignoring these things. Thanks very much for listening. Good night.
Good night, and thank you so much for your contribution to the program. We're going to pause now to respond to some of these questions, and then we'll go back to the phone lines. And I believe we can start with the first question, which has asked if either Dr. Drew or Dr. Douglas have taken the vaccine, and if you think they can do more to educate people about the vaccine and encourage them to get vaccinated.
Well, I'll tell you what I know. I know that the science has proven that the vaccines are safe, that they are effective, and that they save lives. And I also mentioned that more than 90% of the doctors have stepped forward and taken the vaccine, and I'm pretty certain that the others who haven't, they will be coming forward. On what percentage the two persons you asked me about fall, whether they fall in the 90% or the 10% who haven't done it just yet, I cannot say. What was the other question? And whether or not they can do more? I believe that we can all do more. One of the things that I said is that one doesn't need a formal invitation to be part of the all of society approach. And I believe that anyone who has a platform, anyone who has a mic, this is a time when we need to be pulling together as a country and making sure that the vaccine information and making sure that persons understand that vaccines save lives, that becomes issue number one. And so between now and when we get to herd immunity, if you see me on any TV program, at any speaking platform, that is the only thing that I'll be speaking about. And I encourage anyone who is in the health field who has information to disseminate that they need to do that also, so we can get to herd immunity and get back to some sense of normalcy.
Having said that, can anyone attend the Atlas session?
I think so. I mean, at these sessions, there's usually some social distancing in place. And if, for example, you would have attended the Old Road session or the St. Paul session, and you were educated about the vaccine and you got your vaccine, then you can save the space for someone who hasn't heard the message, but it's open to everyone.
And we, in fact, encourage all persons who are interested to come, wear your mask, observe the COVID-19 protocols. Those are important. What I can say is that the Atlas Community Center is one of the largest and most modern. We do have space in the hall and outside the hall. There is an open area. The intention will be to have some tents outside, and that, of course, will provide other opportunities for persons. But we are encouraging particularly persons from the community, but there is no bar. In fact, I have had one or two persons who have called and said they are going to come, they want to be vaccinated, and we want to encourage as many persons who can come, if only for the vaccination part, do come and take your vaccine as quickly as possible. Time is of essence, and one should not delay, because lives and livelihoods are in fact at stake. I want to go back to the question if more can be done. More certainly can be done by all of us in reaching out, in encouraging our family members, our circle of friends, those at our workplace to go quickly and get the vaccines. The vaccines are free, but they come at a huge cost. It is free to the recipient, but it comes at a heavy cost to the country. Indeed, I repeated that the last time we had that special shipment, well, that special donation from India, which came by chartered plane, it cost us, for the currency union, 700,000 EC dollars approximately. US $250,000. That is significant. And the vaccines are going at about what? Depending on the type, between 3 US, I gather, and 10.
4 to 30 US.
4 to
30 US, depending on
30 US. So this is a heavy cost, and it is free, and it can make a difference to your quality of life. And that is why we are urging everyone to get on board as quickly as possible. And I want, on that note, just to commend persons who are doing their little bit. And one test how effective and how much more we can do perhaps will be, have we gotten 70% of our family members vaccinated? Have we encouraged at least 70% of the persons at our workplace to be vaccinated? That would be a good guide, because that is the national target. And if from our own little corner, if we will, we can get 70% of our circle of friends and family members there, you would have done perhaps the best you can in the circumstances. I want to commend the churches. Several churches have invited doctors and other health experts to come out and to speak to their membership. And I think that is very good. I spoke in my presentation to the Church of God in Keon, Dr. Ben Brown. I gather the Antioch Baptist Church is having a similar information session. I'm aware that the Church of God in Newton Ground has had its own session, and other churches are doing the same. I want to commend the workplaces that are inviting the health experts to come to speak to them. And his own presentation, Dr. Wilkinson mentioned a number of entities, including, I think, the Bar Association, which have invited. I hope that every important entity, and each entity is an important one, will do the same. Get the facts from the people you know and from the people you can trust. And we have in the leadership of our health ministry, doctors who you can rely upon. The true test of it is that they were among the first to have volunteered. And the first day when we launched our vaccination rollout, over 20 plus of doctors across the various specialities went forward. They went forward to show that it was good enough for them. And if it is good enough for them who, in part, keep you healthy, it must be good enough for you, or even better for you. So I'm inviting everyone, to do what they can to take this forward, because at stake it is more than you, your family. At stake is the recovery of our country, which we have to take very seriously. AG, you may want to add your quota.
Thank you, Prime Minister. I wanted to respond to Bucky, who raised the question about the role of the opposition leaders, and to say that today at the National COVID Task Force meeting, we had hoped that the leader of the opposition, Dr. Douglas, would have attended with his team that had been invited, and unfortunately they weren't able to come today. And I've asked if they could have rescheduled, and we are hoping that they will attend the task force and meet with the task force next week, Tuesday. It's important to understand that when we speak about population immunity, herd immunity, the numbers from the last census would be instructive, because at the last census, we had a population of 47,195 individuals. Now, Dr. Wilkinson will tell you that the vaccine will only be administered to those 18 and above. And we have identified the population 18 and above to be about 33,000 to 34,000 individuals, which means that when we want to reach herd immunity, we have to vaccinate 33 to 34,000 individuals. In other words, all of the adults in our society, we should be aiming to vaccinate. And so when the Prime Minister speaks about all of society, when Dr. Wilkinson speaks of all of society, we have to have everyone on board. And so we are hoping next week, Tuesday, at the National COVID Task Force, that we involve those who have leadership positions in the opposition to come and to share their views with us, and for them to hear the medical fraternity, and we can exchange. Because all of us in St Kitts and Nevis are in this together. COVID, if it was to come to St Kitts and to have clusters and to get community spread, is not going to pick out anybody who is Labour or Unity, NRP or CCM. It will not pick out an individual. We are all in this thing together, so if one person gets it, anyone can. And it is to protect all of us, our families, our neighbors. When you take that vaccine, you are not only protecting yourself, but also those around you. And so one would urge that regardless of any type of affiliation, whether it be religious, political, or otherwise, that all of us, all adults in St Kitts and Nevis, must take this vaccine. And we will encourage you to do so, we'll urge you to do so, provide as much information to dispel some of the misinformation that is being spread. And it's very critical that regardless of your affiliation, we are all in this thing together. I think it's Queen E.G., our Calypso Queen said, I think, we're all in this thing together. And so it is for us to participate fully without any reservation.
Speak to the date by which we are hoping to reach herd immunity. That was the second part of the caller who posed the question about the number that would have to be vaccinated? And is there a possibility in the administration's attempt to reach herd immunity that vaccination could be made mandatory?
That's the last one, the second part of that question first. And I'll then ask Dr. Wilkinson to ask about the date when the health team has planned and see where they can get that. I would say that the government of St Kitts and Nevis has said that we will not make it mandatory at this time. It has not been contemplated, primarily because we have done a very effective job to date of restraining the transmission of COVID-19 in our country. If it was, for instance, that the pandemic had swept through St Kitts and many of us had contacted or contracted the virus, it clearly would be within the realm of our legislation through the Public Health Act to do so. But it also has questions and implications for our Constitution, questions of privacy and so forth. But at this point, the government has no intention of making it mandatory. It is for all of us, whether you be a family member, whether you be in the church, at your workplace, to encourage our neighbors, our fellow workers to take this vaccine, because it protects us and you as well. All of us must see it, that it is important for us. Look, the vaccine would not necessarily stop you from contracting the COVID virus if it comes to St. Kitts. But the medical advices from Dr. Wilkinson and others, you will not get seriously ill. You will not impact the health system, and you will not die. That's what we have been told. So that if it does, it wards it off and keeps us safe. And that is what we must see and do, to keep our community safe, to keep each and every one of us safe. Yes.
First part of the question to me, and I'm going to answer it in two parts. When you look at the news and what is happening in the United States and the United Kingdom, they are rolling forward with their vaccination programs. And for example, the President of the United States has said clearly that he plans to have the entire US population who can be vaccinated by June, July this year. Now, we have been preparing to welcome the world back because we can't stay closed down forever, and tourism is our major industry. And we need to make sure that we have reached herd immunity so that we can build back our tourism industry. The number of vaccines that we have and that we will get in the next few months, we should be able to reach herd immunity once everyone does the responsible thing by June, July also, or even before. And so persons have to understand the importance of this. Now, as more information comes to light, we have also realized too that by taking the AstraZeneca vaccine, you have a 67% chance of not getting sick. And so it is not everyone who gets the vaccine will get sick. So you can have persons who will not get sick and transmit the virus, or some persons who may have very mild disease and not know it. But what is known for sure is that it can significantly decrease your risk of having severe disease and from dying. And so with the vaccines we have available, they are no good if they're in a refrigerator, and that's why we're asking everyone to step forward and take the vaccine that we know is safe and effective and can save lives.
If we could just quickly answer the remaining questions so we can go back to the phone lines. There was a question about whether or not security was at the establishments where the breaches took place, and if there will be any sort of penalties for the security personnel.
Yes, there was security. In our discussions today, in reviewing what occurred, it was felt that there was not adequate security, and we have to let everyone know that when we identify an establishment to be able to take visitors. We normally think about 3 different categories of visitors at this point in our establishments. You have what is called, of course, the quarantine site, and some hotels do quarantine. That is that you are restricted to your room in the hotel, and you can have supplies delivered to your door. You're not allowed to walk around. You can have vacation in place that allows you to, as I mentioned earlier, stay in the hotel and participate in some restricted services at the hotel, go to breakfast or a dinner, and that type of thing. Maybe if you're close to the beach, if that's restricted. But there's also the question of where locals can maybe go to hotel establishments, and we call that staycation. That is not one that is affected by the COVID issue. When there is a question of vacation in place or quarantine, the establishment must have a certain security detail. And these are reviewed by compliance officers from the task force, the security armed forces, whether it is the commissioner, senior police officers. These visit these establishments to ensure that security is in place. What we understood is that there were security at the establishment, and that they had left their post for about 45 minutes. And so that was a serious breach. We understand that the hotel itself has dealt with the employee. We'll have to carry out further investigations to ensure what next will happen in that case. But clearly, it is a question where adequate security must be provided for, regardless of whoever it is, where you have quarantine facilities or vacation in place. I think that was one. What the other part of that question was?
I think you addressed both. It was whether if there was security at the establishments and if they would face penalties in relation to the breaches.
The hotel itself has taken remedial action against the employee in terms of that. That's a question whether it is the hotel itself may have to be restricted. What happened in this case, that once the breach was determined, the entire group that had been involved in this, some 80-odd people, had their vacation in place status removed, and they were restricted to quarantine in their rooms. So they could not participate in any further activities on the hotel compound. This has happened in another establishment where we have had to suspend vacation in place for 30 days until they would show a new plan that showed more strict and rigorous security protocols. So it is something that is constantly monitored by our compliance officers and by the task force, by security forces. And we insist and we intend to ensure that our people are kept safe. Keeping our citizens safe is our #1 priority. And to date, we believe that we have done a very good job of doing so. So this year, for us, is something that we take in a very serious manner. I will ensure that this does not happen further.
There are different layers of security, and the hotel facilities oblige to have adequate security to police the number of guests that are on compound. And that, by and large, that requires that private security be hired to do that. The government, of course, through its quarantine officers and its police, attempt to provide some measure of additional support to that process. And so it really requires a commitment by all to do the very best that they can, and a commitment by the guests to take seriously the COVID-19 pandemic. And therefore, the hotel again has to have a response. When there are breaches, the government response is quite clear, and indeed those who fail to comply with the law will face the consequences in the law courts.
But I
What we're going to do now is go back to the phone lines and take any remaining calls that we have, and I'll add the questions to the ones we got previously, and we'll try to address those and then go to the WhatsApp messages. So we'll go back to the phone lines if we have any additional calls. Welcome to Leadership Matters.
Hello.
Hello, good evening.
Yes, good night. Good night to you, Ms. Bryant. Good night to the Prime Minister, to Attorney General and Chief of Staff, Mr. Cameron Wilkinson. Just now I heard the Attorney General said something that's right. There's not enough adequate security, and I am calling about a concern in reference of that. I am a taxi and tour operator who are certified, have the given seal to put on our windscreen to travel to show that we are who the chosen few who are certified. However, when we leave the airport, going to the journey down to the southeast peninsula in Cockershell, the jetty, that's where the taxi park dock to pick up their passengers, our guests, to neighbors to be quarantined. We have discovered they would call from the airport dispatchers who are employed by the tourism department to inform them down there that we are coming down, respectively, the cab license plate, the chauffeur, and the amount of passengers, the name as well coming down. On Sunday is a matter that is ongoing. It took place on Sunday last week.
Hello? Caller, are you there?
Yeah, ma'am.
Hello?
Hey, good night. This is Alva Pemberton. I just want to take this opportunity again to congratulate the Prime Minister and his team and the panel for all the magnanimous job they're doing. But I have a simple question tonight. Since that vaccine is now totally free for everyone, is there a cutoff point? Because I strongly believe that those who are reluctant to take the vaccine at this time, now that it's free, should have to pay a cost later. That's my question.
Okay, thank you so much for your contribution to the program. And just to say, it appears as though we lost the previous caller. That call ended abruptly, unfortunately, and we weren't able to get the complete understanding of what he was trying to say, as he didn't get to finish. Do we have any additional calls? If we have any additional calls? Okay, I'm told that we don't have any further calls, so we'll try to respond as best as we can, as quickly as we can. We had a previous caller who asked for an update on whether bus drivers and taxi drivers were getting vaccinated, and they thought this was an important group.
Yeah, I actually think that he asked whether bus drivers and taxi drivers, and if we knew the categories of persons who were being vaccinated. And the answer is yes, because we've been targeting certain categories. So, for example, we have looked at the doctors, the police, the nurses, the frontline workers. We have looked at those who work in the tourism industry. We are moving our vaccination program into the prisons. We have identified the schools. And so we have different categories that we're looking at. And yes, we'll be targeting the bus drivers and taxi drivers also. And so whatever category of worker you are, we will bring in the education program to you. Now, somebody had also asked what COVID-19 stands for, and COVID-19 stands for coronavirus disease, because the virus that causes COVID-19 is a coronavirus, a virus that shapes like a crown. And 19 has to do with the year that it was discovered, 2019. In the previous set of calls, also somebody asked whether or not one should wait for other vaccines. And I made reference to this in my presentation, where I said this pandemic is like a fire that is trying to engulf you. And if we have a vaccine that we know is effective and safe, we should use it now, and there is no reason for you to be waiting for something that is more effective. Someone also asked whether or not those persons who refuse to take the vaccine, if they would pay a price later on. And the answer is yes, in that the price you will pay is in getting severe disease or even losing your life, because the country cannot stay closed forever, and we are hoping to get to herd immunity. And if you choose not to take the vaccine, once the country is opened up, the virus is going to come, and the persons who are vulnerable and it would be the persons who are not vaccinated. Those are the ones who would be suffering. And so my advice to anyone who is out there is that they should go forward and take the vaccine at this point in time when it is free and when you know it can save your life.
Mr. Attorney General, someone also. Sure.
In relation to the taxis and the bus drivers, we are hoping that being at the front line, they, along with the police officers, the nurses, would see self-interest in going very quickly to get vaccinated. It would be highly irresponsible, in my view, for any member of the front line to take a decision not to get vaccinated. That is akin to one taking the decision not to wear masks. They're equally important as this situation evolves, and I would want to urge them all. We have extended an invitation to the president of the East Bus operators, East Bus Terminal, those who operate there, to attend the town hall on Thursday and to bring along some of his membership. We will hope that those who are not yet vaccinated will use the opportunity on Thursday night, if not before, to get themselves vaccinated. And those who are in the front line really must make a decision whether it is a sensible thing for them to do by opting out.
I was at a session today where a gentleman of UK extract was getting vaccinated, and he made a comment saying that he was shocked when he went to the Newtown Health Center how many non-nationals were there taking the vaccine. And yes, once you're a resident on the island, the vaccine is free, but we need to make sure that the local persons step forward and take the vaccine also. You need to take advantage of the opportunity that you have available to you.
Mr. Attorney General, the caller asked what can be done to someone, or if something is in place for someone who accuses the government of something and has no facts to support that.
There's a question about what can be done. Culture, the question is, and you're fully aware that if someone says something defamatory to an individual, that can be slander. There is a process by which to take them to court. Or if it writes something about an individual, that also can be taken as libel, can also be taken to court. In the context, though, of political exchanges, it is somewhat difficult to do so because we live in a country in which people can express opinions once it does not cross the line and becomes really treacherous or treasonous or something of that nature. So that can be answered and should be answered by right-thinking people like you to be able to put the proper case to the country and to influence those who listen to you and pay careful attention to you and follow your good reason. And I think this is why, for instance, where you have naysayers who say things, we go to the polls and people choose the right-thinking people to run the country. So there is a way in which people do answer these things. But to say that if somebody says something that you do not like, to take them to court if it is not defamatory of one or injurious to an individual, I think that is something that we can speak to. If I may, Jackie, while I'm on this, I want to speak a little bit to the individual who was speaking and got cut off. Because I think what I gleaned from what he was saying is that he is someone who is involved in the tourism trade, carrying people from the airport to Reggae Beach, for instance. And it's important for all of us to understand that there is a very rigorous regime that has been put in place, mandated by the Prime Minister and the Cabinet, to make sure that anyone who lands here is, one, ushered into a form of quarantine or to protect all the citizens of our country. We established what we call a corridor of containment. So if someone lands on American Airlines, for instance, and is going to Nevis, they have to go from the airport all the way to where you can catch a ferry, and that has to be done in a manner in which the driver of the bus is not contaminated. Those who carry them on the ferries are not contaminated, and those in between. So it's a very rigorous arrangement in which people wear masks, in which they have barriers, and there's a certain amount of sanitizers. So there is a very carefully established regime that has been established by the medical team, the HUSC, Dr. Laws and Dr. Wilkinson and others, to ensure that all of the people involved in this tourism trade are protected. We don't want anybody to be outside of that protection. It's very critical. And this is why we feel comforted to this point that we have been able to starve off the type of transmission that you have found in some of our neighbors. It's very rigid, very rigorous. And I must commend all of those who work at the bus, drivers and so forth, in the taxi and the tourism field who have been adhering to that. But there are some breaches, and there are some areas. We speak about bus drivers and others who are very lax. They don't wear their masks. They're not ensuring that those who come into the buses wear their masks. And this must be done. This must be done. Otherwise, we now know that the police can issue fixed notice penalties. You can be charged $100 if you're found without wearing a mask in public. If there are clear breaches, there are some offenses, you can have a general penalty before a magistrate of up to $5,000. And I think that was one of the questions that was asked, what type of penalty? And we expect that the magistrate has the jurisdiction to issue a charge up to $5,000 if for any one of those who breached the quarantine, the vacation in place over the weekend. That is the offense, that is the penalty for that offense. And we wait to see what type of punishment that the magistrate would be able to issue in this matter.
Thank you so much for making an attempt to address the concerns of the caller based on what the input they were able to make. We had a question, the final question I have here from any of the callers would be the question about when will the government begin building houses again?
Matter, the building of houses is an ongoing program, really. And through the COVID-19, everything slowed in terms of construction. The National Housing Corporation is the main entity through which the government builds home. And the National Housing Corporation at this point in time is on a collection campaign to gather enough resources to resume the construction. We want those who are beneficiaries of our housing program to really remember and consider their obligation to pay their monthly installments as they are due. If you cannot pay the full amount, please pay what you can. By doing so, you provide and you contribute to your friends, your neighbors, your families, the rest of the country being able to get a home. So we encourage people to be highly responsible and to ensure that their mortgage does not suffer in the amount, the many things that they may have to do, paying for where you spend your night, you spend your days, that becomes a critical matter. But beyond the NHC, there are other ways in which the government has been supporting the acquisition of homes in the country. And one such way has been our special program called the First-Time Homeowners, where if you are building your first home, the government will provide you full duty-free and building materials. So that avenue has allowed over the last couple of years hundreds of persons to begin the construction of their home. The saving with respect to the duty-free and material has been significant. And so that program is still in place, and those who can get resources to make a start will find that this saving will help them to get there even more quickly. So we encourage everyone, get the application form apply to the Ministry of Finance, that is then processed, and you can get the benefit of the concessions available. We are hoping very shortly to be able to put some additional resources into the Development Bank and other entities to be able to continue a much more vigorous program of home building in the country. But for the time being, with the challenges of the COVID-19, which have impacted upon government revenues, impacted upon the cash flows of the NHC, we are not building at the same pace as before. What we are doing is that we are completing a number of units that had been started, and we have some homes still under construction in St. Peter's and in other areas. We have some houses that are being completed under a special program of our bilateral collaboration with Venezuela in the Mansion area, and of course we will very shortly be handing over those at the Wellington Road housing project. So those are some things that are active at this particular moment in time. In the meantime, though, I would want to encourage persons who are interested in home to save, to put aside something every week so that when the opportunity comes, you at least have something. Whether it works out to be the insurance costs or it works out to be the initial deposit, if you are serious about home ownership, do not be passive about it. Do something proactive and begin to set aside some monies for when that particular opportunity arises.
At this point, we're going to take a quick break, and when we return, we'll go to the WhatsApp messages and we'll have closing remarks by our panelists. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Leadership Matters. My name is Jacqueline Bryan, your host this evening. And at this point, we're going to take the messages we received via WhatsApp, and I will read through the questions, and the appropriate panelist will respond. So the first question we have here asks, well, it says it's for Dr. Wilkinson, and they would like to know if there would be any problem if they took the vaccine. They said that they have high blood pressure and high blood sugar. Can they take the vaccine?
So persons with existing conditions, these are the persons who will fare worse if they got COVID-19 disease. And these are the persons who the vaccine is intended for, really. And so yes, if you have diabetes, if you have hypertension, if you have asthma, if you have any of those chronic diseases, you should take the vaccine.
And like I've said before in this program, all the questions and comments that are put to me, I usually share. This one says, Doctor, the new 7 Doors Medical Center is started, or if not yet, then when? In Diepbe needs a high-rise medical tourism medical center so people from all over could come to St. Kitts, bring in doctors and nurses from Cuba, 300 rooms and 7 floors high. Thank you. I don't know if anybody wants to respond to that.
certainly would welcome any investment in the country. And I believe we had said that health tourism is one subset of the broad tourism arena in which we want to become involved. I believe that our success so far in the management of the COVID-19 gives us good marks to be able to market ourselves as a destination where one can come for safe living. And safe living also involves access to good quality health care. I want to indicate that already at one of our hotel facilities, we have a new health offerings being happening at that facility. It's basically being targeted eventually to guests, sports personalities, movie stars and the likes. Basically, we want to bring persons into St Kitts and Nevis to have their health care be taken care of. And that again will create another spin-off area, niche in tourism, which we are looking at. The support services that come with these things are critical, but they are work in progress. Specifically, with respect to DAPE, as we build out the country, our view is that investment should go anywhere. We are a small country really, and geography or distance more particularly become a non-relevant issue. So if someone wants to invest significantly in DAPE, we are all for that, and we will give it equal support, because we are for the diversification of opportunities across St Kitts and Nevis.
Ask, can the Honourable Minister Brantley give some info on COVID rollout in Nevis? Minister Brantley is not with us this evening. Can anyone provide an update on the rollout in Nevis and how that's been going?
Yes, okay. Well, the rollout in St Kitts and Nevis, they have been going parallel. And to date, we have 4,985 persons who are vaccinated in St Kitts, and in Nevis, 1,918. And I think roughly the ratio is like 2 to 1. There's a dashboard that is released every day, and so you can go online and you can see the dashboard, because it gives the breakdown, St Kitts and Nevis, and then the total. So when we spoke about the 6,903, we were talking about the collective figures for St Kitts and Nevis.
The next question asks, if the Four Seasons guests involved in the breach this weekend were negative, why must persons quarantine? A local beach bar staff was told to quarantine, but lots of patrons were there and mingling. Is there a public concern?
It's important for the public to know that a negative COVID test is as good as the time when it was taken. And when we say persons coming into the Federation have to have a negative COVID test within 72 hours, it's for risk reduction, but that person can still get on the plane and become infected from someone else on the plane, or a few days after they had the negative test. And that is why we also insist on the extra level of protection, which is the 14-day quarantine after you got here. And so if you broke quarantine and went out and mingled with other persons, you're putting those persons at risk. And that is why the the other patrons at the bar who were mingling with the persons who broke quarantine, they had to be contained, they had to be put in quarantine, and hopefully the guests who breached quarantine, they will test negative, and the persons who were in contact with them would test negative. But of course, if there is any positivity there, then we have the risk of increased transmission.
Will the Moderna and Pfizer vaccines also be available in St Kitts and Nevis?
First of all, we have to use what we have, okay? And right now we have the AstraZeneca vaccine. We are working on other avenues to get more vaccines available, but I said again in my presentation, if the house is on fire, use the fire extinguisher that you have. And so this thing about waiting and asking for other vaccines, I don't think that that's a practical view. The other thing is the Moderna and Pfizer vaccine, they require ultra cold storage, and those refrigerators cost about $150,000 to $200,000 US. If we were to have those vaccines in the 17 health centers that we have, we would have to invest in ultra-cold freezers for the 17 health centers, and that's not a practical, economical way of dealing with it when we have a vaccine that is safe and effective, and we can reach 100% effectivity by having everybody taking the vaccine.
This person asks, when are we going to receive our second set of severance benefit?
Well, that is a work in progress. On Monday, we were to have had an update from the Labour Commissioner. That has been postponed for this Monday. But as far as information that has been coming in, the Labour Department is working hard to get these processed. We are dealing with a significant number of persons who have been made jobless as a result of COVID-19. And so the process takes time. Never before have we had to deal with that magnitude of persons being put, as it were, on the dole in such a short window. And so it's ongoing work. We will look specifically when the Cabinet meets with the team on Monday and ways in which we can expedite this, because we really do want persons to get their monies as quickly as possible. And indeed, on Monday, we will also have the Social Security, which is an important partner in the processing of severance claim, since the employers have to, by law, file their returns with Social Security. Then the Social Security data becomes critical for verification of the information submitted by employee and employer alike. And so the critical partners, we will be there. We will have the Accountant General, and his department is responsible for the issuing of checks. So we will have on Monday all the critical partners involved in the processing of claims for severance, and at the end of it, we will be able to make an official statement as to where we are at, and of course how we are going to expedite not only second check but first checks for those who have not yet had. We want to make the point which we have made over and over too, that these payments are only made possible because the federal government has invested significantly to ease the burden which the unemployed is faced with at this particular moment in time. We inherited a severance fund which was not properly capitalized, and we have sought the expert advice of those who know about these things, the actuaries, to assist us in determining a funding formula that will avoid the fund getting into the red. Because the fund is in the red, that is the fund, never had enough inflows, largely because of a bad policy decision of the last administration, where they created a long service arrangement gratuity for certain categories of workers, but they did not create a funding source. And so the severance fund deals now with genuine severance claim and applications to it coming from those who want to benefit from the long service gratuity arrangement. Two obligations imposed on one fund without any additional inflows to the fund clearly is a recipe for disaster. My government has already, between last year and this year, committed over $28 million for severance payment. It is substantial. And of course, it's the burden that the government is prepared to carry in the interest of social justice. But we have to get this thing right. And of course, we have to appreciate that at one point, Social Security was paying up to 8,000 people. So it is a significant number, and that by its nature would create some delay. But we are doing all in our power, and we shall continue to heed advice and suggestions as to how we can expedite. Lastly, one of the challenges that has been recounted is that several employers have not paid their Social Security. And so the Social Security cannot verify that the employee had work, or if they had work in any event, the Social Security having not received the contribution, could not certify the particular claim. And it is difficulties like these that are creating an extended period of concern for employees. I want, therefore, to encourage every employer to be responsible. You deduct the employee's contribution. Please pay it over immediately or soonest thereafter, because we can avoid some of the difficulties that employees are now experiencing.
This question asks, if and when herd immunity is achieved, what will be the process in regards to quarantine? Will the number of quarantine days be reduced? And will quarantine be lifted permanently?
I can say that the whole purpose of getting towards herd immunity is for us to get back to some sense of normalcy, and discussions are ongoing as to the changes that will occur. We cannot discuss that right now. As I said, they are ongoing and you will be updated, but we can't put the cat before the horse. And so it's important for us to move towards herd immunity. It starts out in your home, in your church, in your school, at your workplace, and eventually we get there as a nation, and then you will see the changes.
If I travel in the summer after having received both doses of the AstraZeneca vaccine, would I have to quarantine for 14 days when I return? This is assuming that we have achieved herd immunity by then. I am hopeful that this restriction will be relaxed for persons who are fully vaccinated.
Again, I just answered the question, you understand, in that in time, and I'm sure pretty soon you'll be hearing the changes that will be occurring as it relates to quarantine, etc.
Good evening. I think that Bucky touched on the issue of bus drivers getting vaccinated, and this is very relevant because of the risks involved. Bus drivers, they are accusing bus drivers of seeming hell-bent on making the lives of commuters miserable to satisfy their own selfish needs and not wearing masks, and many are saying that they are not going to take the vaccine. Bus commuting is one of the more vulnerable sectors of our country in terms of exposure to the virus, and sadly the drivers generally are not doing their part to ensure that protocols are kept. It's not a question, but rather a comment. This person poses several questions to the Prime Minister. They ask, good night to all. Can the Prime Minister indicate when the bill that speaks to the Prime Minister serving only 2 terms will be taken back to the Parliament and passed? Also, when will the integrity in public life be fully implemented with the submission of financial declarations to the Commission? Also, when can the Prime Minister provide an update on the Boundaries Committee work? Is there a draft? Can the Attorney General indicate whether for the next general elections, legislation will be in place to ensure that votes will be counted where they were cast?
I want to thank the caller for these important questions that questions which form part of our good governance agenda, and we are committed to them. The timing of items and the parliamentary agenda, of course, is determined by Cabinet based on a whole range of issues. And Thursday, for example, the Parliament will be concerning itself with quite a number of issues of relevance to accountability and satisfying certain other agencies about the issues to do with the health of our financial system, actions against money laundering, illicit financial transactions, etc. So these matters, of course, come and they are time-bound and time-sensitive. The question of the 2 terms, whenever passed, really will not affect the outcome, because once the law is passed, it takes effect, the law will take effect prospectively, and therefore there will be no loss of value once it is done, and we are committed to have this done in our first term. I will let the Attorney General deal with the matter of the IPL and the votes. In terms of the boundaries work, that work is ongoing. We last had a matter in the court. We are waiting on a court decision with respect to that. But what is important early in the life of the second term of the Team Unity administration, we put a Boundaries Committee in place. And the Boundaries Committee must work expeditiously to execute its mandate. The committee is chaired by Mr. James Buchanan, and it has 4 other members, 2 nominated by the Prime Minister. On the government side, the Honorable Sean Richards and the Honorable Akila Byron Nisbet, and 2 nominated by the Leader of the Opposition, the Leader of the Opposition himself, the Honorable Denzel Douglas, and the second party with him, AG, is Dr. Jeffrey Hanley. So the boundaries committee work is in the hands of the persons designated by the Constitution as being fit and proper to execute them. We, of course, have to treat with some circumspection the work of the committee, but it is in the national interest that this matter be concluded within a reasonable time. And we think this time, having put the committee in place so quickly, there should be adequate time for it to do its work. The Attorney General perhaps could add his own quota with respect to those. So the IPL, the Boundaries Committee vote and votes counted, I think, at the polling stations. I defer to the Attorney General.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Yes, the Integrity in Public Life has been activated. Recently, early in February, the Office of the Attorney General did meet with the Commission, which is headed by retired Judge Justice Paletta Lands, and has 2 other members, Mr. Knight, Freddie Knight, and Mrs. Boddy, make up the Commission. There is also an executive officer in place in the person of Mr. Albert Edwards, Bertie Edwards. We met with them and we discussed at length a number of regulations and recommendations made by the Commission to strengthen the legislation. This has gone forward to Cabinet, which has asked for further clarification, and that is pending. We expect that within a couple of weeks from now that would have been completed, and that we in turn will go to the Parliament to be able to make 1 or 2 amendments to the existing law as well, and regulations to assist. We expect that sometime during the middle of this year that we would be able to establish a date for the making of declarations to the Commission. That's in terms of the IPL, but there's ongoing work that is going on, and we are working actively to ensure that this is done as quickly as possible. In terms of the boundaries, I think that the Prime Minister has clearly established that the Boundaries Commission has already been constituted, that they have had 1 or 2 meetings of their own, and they go forward. As well as we also await the judgment of the court in relation to the matter that had been raised as way back as 2015 and had been before the court all this time. It is now pending to hear from His Lordship as to the outcome of the current status of boundaries here in St Kitts and Nevis. Finally, in terms of voting, counting where there are a number of recommendations that have been made by the Electoral Commission, the Supervisor of Elections, and the Commission have proposed certain adjustments to help to enhance and strengthen the electoral process here. We would note that at the last elections, that those who came and observed, the CARICOM observers as well as the local observers, all felt that the elections that were had were free and fair and conducted properly. Nonetheless, we expect that these recommendations that have been put forward by the Commission will be deliberated and put before the Cabinet, as well as, if needs be, will go to the Parliament to ensure that we continue to have free and fair elections in our country and that democracy prevails. This government is one that believes in the whole concept of good governance. We believe in the administration of justice and the rule of law. And so far, we believe that we have done a good job in ensuring that our people live in a society, community that is free and fair. And so those would be my comments on that at this point.
The persons to be vaccinated that will represent 70% herd immunity. I believe you answered that before. You said about 33,000. So then the final question would be, good evening, should we be leaving these quarantine sites to the hotel security?
The question is that once a hotel has applied to be certified either as a quarantine site or to have vacation in place, it is visited and there is a thorough audit and investigation done by the National COVID Task Force. This involves the tourism representatives on the task force, it involves compliance officers, and most importantly, the Commissioner of Police and his security, the police force, also goes and reviews this. There is the opportunity for the hotel to employ local security teams. This comes at a cost, and this here, it has to pass muster through the security personnel, the Commissioner of Police and his team, the compliance officers, all review this. And so this is a matter that has to go back clearly, in the case of the breaches in Nevis, have to be seriously reviewed to see where they fell down. But ultimately, it is a question that is dealt with by the Commissioner of Police and the security, as well as compliance officers and the National COVID Task Force. It is not left solely to the hotel, because the hotel has to meet certain benchmarks. These fall below, then that is a matter that will have to be taken up and dealt with accordingly.
Thank you all so much for addressing the questions and the comments that we got. We continue to see participation in the program increase, and that means that you find it informative and educational and that there's value to the program. We are going to have closing remarks in reverse order of the opening remarks, which means, Attorney General, you get to go first. So if you can just briefly give your closing remarks.
Thank you very much, Jackie, and thank you for, as usual, doing an excellent job in hosting this program. I'd want to say to all of our citizens that the National COVID Task Force is committed to ensuring that there is a proper response to the COVID-19 pandemic that has struck our country. Each of the members of the task force, and I've deliberated on them, work diligently 24/7. They are invested in this task. They are of the highest quality of public servants, and we are committed to ensure that COVID-19 response is done to the best of our ability. In terms of breaches, we want to say very clearly that the security forces or compliance officers will continue to monitor all of those who have been granted permits and permission to hold functions, events. The question of mass gatherings is one which we take very seriously, because as would have happened in Nevis, or would have happened, there is always the possibility for somebody who may have a potential to be a transmitter of COVID disease to end up in a large gathering, a mass gathering. We have to record the names of people who come to your establishments when you have been granted permission. You must ensure that you adhere to the numbers that are being given, and these will now be policed even further, much more seriously, to the full extent. Also note that if someone is in breach of the protocols, it's an offense that can be taken before the court, and the penalties can be up to $5,000 to an offender. So we have to be aware that we take very seriously the protection of our citizens and our country. And we wish everyone that they be safe, they get vaccinated, because the quicker we get vaccinated, the quicker we reach herd immunity, and that we can reach a level of normalcy that we can open up fully. Thank you.
So much, Minister of Justice and Legal Affairs and Attorney General, the Honorable Vincent Byron Jr. We'll now hear from the Medical Chief of Staff at the JNF General Hospital, Dr. Cameron Wilkinson.
I'm going to be very brief by simply saying that the vaccine we have available, it is safe, it is effective, and it is free, and you should take the opportunity to go and get vaccinated, because getting vaccinated, as the Attorney General just said, is the quickest way for us to get to herd immunity and to get back to a sense of normalcy. It is not normal for human beings to be social distancing, to be having your nose and mouth covered with a mask, and the sooner we can get back to normal and get rid of these things and start to socialize again, the better it is for all of us.
Thank you so much, Dr. Wilkinson. And finally, we'll hear from the host of the program, Prime Minister, the Honorable Dr. Timothy Harris, to make his closing remarks.
Thank you very much, Jackie. I would want firstly to say a word of special thanks to all who have tuned in tonight to participate in this very informative educational program. I want to thank the callers, each caller, and those who also engage us via WhatsApp. You made a fantastic contribution by putting reasonable questions to the panelists, and I hope that we're satisfied by providing you candid responses to the questions posed. Every question is edifying because it gives us a peek into the mind of our citizens and residents, and it helps us to better understand your concern. So I want to thank you and encourage even more persons to participate directly through the engagement via the questions which they put. I want to thank the regulars like Bucky Gottit and Culture and Politics, and Alice in Wonderland, whom we haven't heard from in a long while. Good to hear you, Alice Pemberton, and all the others who have called, the first-time callers, for your input. It was good also hearing from Jean Howell, and I want to thank him and to say it was really, you make this program worth it by your calls. Of course, without the two panelists, the program would not have been as successful as we had envisaged it. I want to thank the Honorable Attorney General for coming and bring his experience to bear, his knowledge of the law, and one who has been intimately involved in carving out the necessary legal framework for us to be able to move around safely in St Kitts and Nevis in the context of the pandemic. I want to say thank you, Honorable Attorney General, and to your team for excellent work so far. Your work had in fact been challenged by the opposition, by the Court of Law, confirmed that we did very well and we were within the ambits of the law. I want to thank Dr. Cameron Wilkinson, who has been hailed in our national awards for excellent service, meritorious service, and I want to commend his excellent leadership. He has taken on this with a passion, so has several others of his peers in the health fraternity, and the country owes you a debt of gratitude, and the callers have been profuse from time to time on every occasion on which you have participated in this program in indicating their love and admiration. Your yeoman service and your patriotism I commend to all of us as a good example. And then I must thank moderator Jackie Bryan, who has been doing a splendid job, and I want to thank her for bringing her own unique style in hosting a very important program. One of the things that distinguishes Leadership Matters is really we lift the level of debate and conversation. We choose topics that are on people's mind, important, have national impact and national consequences. And we focus, therefore, on getting an informed public who could contribute constructively to nation building. To all who have been involved in any way in doing something positive and constructive to help us return our country to normalcy, I say thank you. The churches, the Chamber of Industry and Commerce, the sport organizations, the radio stations, everyone who has done something positive, thank you from the bottom of my heart. And clearly there is always space for more, to do more, to be more constructive. And in that regard, I want to extend an open invitation to those political parties in St Kitts and Nevis to become much more involved in doing the right thing, become much more involved in putting the interests of our country first. At a time of global crisis, we are called upon to honor our country's watchwords, country above self. And so it will be very nice to see more action coming from political parties separate and distinct from the government. From the People's Labour Party, we want to do more and we shall do more. I'm sure from the CCM Party, they want to do more and will do more. From PAM Party, we must see and hear more being done. Equally, from the Labour Party and the NRP, we want to see and hear more being done. There is enough room for you. It's an all-of-society approach. And you don't need an invitation to do the right thing. You just need a good judgment and good leadership. And so I extend the hand of welcome to all and to say whatever we can do in this particular matter, let us do it together. Together, we will always achieve more. So in closing, it has been a very good experience for me tonight. And I want to again say thank you. Thank you to God for his favor to our nation and our people in particular. And I hope our people from this program and several others will have the wisdom to do the right thing. The right thing is to get yourself vaccinated as soon as possible. Thank you. Thank you all again for viewing.
And thank you all for tuning in and participating and making the show a success. I hope you enjoy the rest of your night. And just to remind you, Leadership Matters airs live on ZIZ every Tuesday at 8 p.m. So until next week, I'll see you soon. Take care.